Newsflash, healthcare doesn't have a diagnosis problem. It has a time problem, and that time problem is quietly ruining lives. Most patients get 13 minutes with a doctor. That's barely enough time to describe symptoms, let alone find the real cause. So you get pills, not answers. Not because doctors don't care, but because the system doesn't allow them to. Haresh Patel learned this the hard way. He spent 12 years building a company and burned millions, and still only won after years of pivots. His takeaway is painful and useful. Building the tech is the easy part. The hard part is knowing who you serve, how you make money, and why your product should even exist. So this time he did something most founders won't. He stopped building and spent 2 years just listening to doctors, patients, and anyone living in the gaps of modern medicine. So steal this method. Before you build your MVP, build your advantage. Create a system that turns messy records, wearable data, and life context into a clean story a human expert can use fast. AI isn't here to replace doctors, it's here to give them their own brain back. Now here's a question. What problem in your life or business keeps coming back because you're treating symptoms instead of digging for the pearl under the mattress? Welcome to AI for Founders. I'm Ryan Estes. If you want the full breakdown on building in healthcare, validating before coding, and why rookie thinking beats resume thinking, this is for founders, operators, and anyone obsessed with solving real problems. 3 quick things. Go to AI for Founders and subscribe so your brain stays ahead of your calendar. Steal 1 idea per week and pretend it was your own. I won't tell. If you're building something big, you're going to need a bigger mind, so start there. And if you like the show, please leave a review, write, "I came for the strategy, stayed for the uncomfortable truth." Now, a quick commercial for Kitcaster. If you're a founder and your growth depends on trust, you don't need more ads, you need more authority. Kitcaster books you as a guest on the right podcast so you can borrow someone else's audience and turn attention into pipeline. You show up with your story, your insights, your product, and Kitcaster handles the outreach, the booking, the prep, and the logistics. It's founder-led marketing without the time suck. Want to be the person your market already feels like they know? Kitcaster makes that happen. That's kitcaster.com by Moburst. Haresh, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate you inviting me as a guest. I was looking forward to this.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Now, we were talking about a little bit beforehand, before we started rolling here, about just how hot medical tech in AI is right now. There's so many opportunities in healthcare for AI to truly revolutionize what we're doing. Also, it gets us into fun tangents of what's possible over the next 12 months, the next 2 years, next 5 years. So I'm super excited for this conversation. Now, I want to introduce early on, you're the CEO of Diagnostic MD, which is a healthcare service company focused on bringing diagnostic imaging directly to patients rather than forcing patients to navigate hospitals, clinics, and long wait times. So that's a brief description, but talk about where you are with the company right now.
We're still very early stages, but late stages. I started the project almost 2 years ago. It was about mid-2023, and I put it on hold. I actually built the first platform, and it was actually, quite frankly, quite advanced in some of the LLMs at that time. But I put it on hold because I found out that, nothing against the technologist, and it's hard work, but building the technology is relatively easy. The harder part is to answer the basic questions of who's my target market, what's my target customer, how do I make money, and how do I monetize, and what's the business model? Stupid is really the mantra. And the reason I have to say it in tongue in cheek is because I was a stupid one when I built my last company. We built a platform, took about a 12-year journey, went through about $30 million. We had a great exit. State Street acquired the company. It was a fintech platform doing very similar things that this platform does, which is taking disparate records, structuring it, creating visuals so that doctors can see the whole patient. So the architecture is the same. But boy, we struggled for, as strong as my product market fit background is, it took us 4 or 5 more years longer because we should have thought those things through. And so each time required a slight adjustment or a major pivot. So I said, let me spend the next 2 years of listening So I've been listening to anybody that's a doctor, anybody that's in the medical field, anybody that's a patient. You're a patient, I'm a patient, and just learning from that. And I think I'm in much better shape. So now we're relaunching the platform, rebuilding it with current standards, with the knowledge that I built up on what I think it'll make to make it more successful than what the first. I wouldn't call the first was not an attempt. It was just like start, nope, stop, time out, answer these questions, have a better idea. Now at the end of the day, I'll still probably guess wrong, and as all of us know, we never end up where we think we're going to be versus where we intended to be. So we have a small group of Notre Dame students that have joined the company, and we're all working on sweat equity. We have built the business plan. I'm in the initial stages of fundraising, and we are in the initial stages of building out the platform. And one other interesting thing we're doing right now is while the platform is being built out, we're going to create an educational center. And this is really to help people find solutions that are out there where medicine just generally says we don't have a good answer. There actually is an answer. So we want to build that out first because that's what people are struggling with. My doctor doesn't have a good answer. I'm tired of taking pills. If you dig deep enough and are willing to be experimental, there are solutions out there that are worth a try. So we want to build that out first and then slip the technology platform, which is a core diagnostic methodology that is more comprehensive than I would say modern medicine offers today.
Incredible. And the validation process is one of my favorite things to talk about, largely because there's that quote, it might have been Abraham Lincoln or something. He said, if I had 10 hours to fell a tree, I'd spend 9 hours sharpening the blade. So I think there's a lot of like wisdom in saying like, okay, hold on, let's pump the brakes. Let's see what the market is, what the product can be. So as you're kind of spending this time, how do you go about kind of like, determining what is the problem you're trying to solve? And then ultimately, who are your first customers?
Well, the customer I'm really passionate about is you and I. It's the patient. Yeah. It's the 100 million of us, out of the 350 million, that are suffering with some sort of ailment where medicine has kind of thrown up its arms and said, you know what, we don't have a good solution. We got a lot of pills for you, or suck it up. But it's not because they don't care. It's just these are complex. They're, I call it the pearl below 20 mattresses. You've got to take each mattress off to figure out what is that pearl that is causing it. And ultimately, there is an answer if you dig deep enough and are willing to be curious and willing to be open-minded. And so we want to make that job easy of peeling the onion or peeling the mattresses off so we can find that pearl and take it out and hopefully solve the problem. So it's addressing the consumer. Now, I'm also consumer focused because I also feel us and the primary doctor are the victims of a system that nobody created maliciously. It just is the way it is. But between pharma and insurance and the hospital network, it just leaves very little time for the patient and doctor to have a real meaningful collaboration. The average time you get in front of a doctor is 13.2 minutes. Kind of let me understand your symptoms. Let me give a few more tests. Let's look at that, come back, look at that snapshot, and I'll give you a recommendation. It's just not deep enough to understand the whole person and what that pearl below that 20 mattress is. So I'm very consumer focused because I really feel like we're the ones suffering from misdiagnosis, underdiagnosis, long diagnosis, and the doctor's suffering too because they joined for compassion. The nurse joined for compassion, but the time, the economic pressures just don't allow for the compassion to come out. So I'm really focused on a patient portal centric, which in itself makes it very differentiated from other platforms that may do the exact same thing, but they're serving the institution side of the business.
You bet. I was speaking with a brilliant guy the other day, and he said, before I really consider launching a product, I want to have distribution built in on the cap table, which is to say he wants to have either design partners that are keyed up, ready to be, customers on day one, or he has a very fast delivery for go-to-market. So, you're validating, you're talking to patients, you're talking to doctors, you have your own personal experiences, of course. How are you starting to think about gathering design partners to help build the product? And then where are you going for kind of the first few customers as you're kind of getting ready for launch?
First one is that in terms of design partners is very confusing. And it's confusing because AI is moving so rapidly that the team that I built with Mercatus, I love those people. They're brilliant. but I'm not sure they're the right team. And so I've been spending a lot of time thinking through what is the right skill set in today's world. Is it the 10, 15 year, experienced front end engineer, right? A solid architect? Or is it somebody that doesn't know software at all, like me? And should I be writing it because of the tools and the ability to transfer exactly what's in my head onto software and make it actually work? So it's actually been more challenging than I thought in selecting the right technology. And so I think that the skill set actually needs to be, and I may be wrong, and I'd love comments from your audience, but I think it's somebody that has 4 or 5 years of good front-end engineering that can, because AI is not perfect, right? So they have to be smart enough to say, wait a minute, that code is BS. Do it again, because I know when I use AI, I find, when I eyeball it, like, okay, I know, because if it's on the business side, marketing side, business plan, that's way off, right? So you need the experience to say, okay, this code is flawed, or it's not going to work, or it's not going to support a particular architecture. But you also need fresh thinking around, I'm not going to code one polygon at a time, right? One code at a time, or one line of code. You need to use more current tools. So I look at people that are what I call rookies. And rookies doesn't mean young. It just means people that want to reinvent themselves. Somebody who said, you know what, I got 20 years of software engineering experience, but I'm going to throw that out the window, and I'm going to relearn what's modern today. That's a rookie. And I think that's the right skill set of looking for that engineering team that are rookies that have experience, but have reinvented themselves leveraging today's technology.
Yeah, rookies. I'm a rookie, It's one thing that I always felt like a warm embrace from Zen. There's that great book from Suzuki, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And a bit of a sidetrack here, but Zen and the Zen abbots really found an interesting audience in America, because we have kind of like that enthusiasm, like, I don't know, let's begin again, let's start again. And that rookie kind of attitude. Now, I'm very fortunate that I have like dozens of these rookies around me that are doing the most incredible things. And I'm really inspired by that, because in the past, development, it's like, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to go find a junior, and I'm going to do some hiring, or I'm going to go find like an agency to help me design. And I've had success, but mostly I've had a lot of challenges and failure with outsourcing development. It can't move at the speed that I'm used to. Now, where you and I have connected is that, entrepreneurs, sure, leadership, sure, but at the core, we're sales dogs. It's like, I know what the customers want. I want to get it to market really quickly. And now, and I mean like right now, in the last couple of weeks, we really have this capability. So one thing that I've been playing around with is kind of the AI augmented software engineering, and a couple of tools. Claude Code right now is unbelievable. I mean, it is developing like very, very quickly. So, rookies like us can really get in there and do damage. But there was a bit of a chasm to build a bridge across, which is, as a rookie, I don't know what I don't know. A lot about software development is like creating the proper guardrails and different kind of compliance issues that I just don't know exist. So shout out to one of the guests on this podcast, Tyler Wells. He's got a company called Brain Grid that actually does that. So you talk to it casually about what you want to do, and then it creates the PRD and all the requirements and tasks that you can then chip off one at a time going into Claude Code. And then, using Claude to help you kind of navigate Claude allows you to build like this very, very, very sophisticated software very quickly, which is really exciting, So when you're kind of approaching it, how to begin development, I understand that unease so much, because one characteristic of kind of more senior developers is it's harder to teach old dogs new tricks. Okay, I've got a confession. As a podcaster and founder, I'm constantly meeting incredible people, guests, listeners, or other entrepreneurs. But here's my little secret. I'm terrible at following up. My inbox is basically a graveyard of missed opportunities. Does that sound like you? You meet someone amazing, exchange emails, have great intentions, and then life happens. 6 months later, you're kicking yourself thinking, I should have stayed in touch with that person. This is exactly why I started using WarmStart.ai. And honestly, it's transformed how I think about my network.
Instead of letting relationships go cold, WarmStart analyzes my existing contacts and helps me identify who I should be reaching out to and why. It even writes the outreach messages for me. But here's the key. I review everything before it goes out. I'm not just talking about this because they're a sponsor. I'm talking about it because watching a healthcare executive use this to build his entire advisory board in one weekend with 4 CEO signups made me realize I was leaving money on the table every single day. Your network is your net worth, but only if you actually nurture it. Check out warmstart.ai, use code AIFF to get $50 off your first month. Stop letting your relationships turn into missed revenue.
This episode is brought to you by MoBurst, the AI-first growth engine trusted by iconic startups like Calm, Robinhood, Reddit, Uber, and Google. MoBurst is a digital full-service mobile-first marketing agency that helps companies to scale and become category leaders. Whether you're finding product market fit or ready to accelerate growth, MoBurst delivers creative, data-driven solutions that help with scale and efficiency and impact. At MoBurst, we're not just guessing what works, we're predicting it. As an AI-first agency, MoBurst uses cutting-edge tools to analyze user behavior, adapt creative in real time, and uncover hidden growth opportunities. The result, marketing that's faster, smarter, and built to convert. From early-stage startups to global brands, we've helped hundreds of companies overcome complex challenges, unlock new audiences, and optimize every metric that matters. At MoBurst, we believe that creative thinking, advanced technology, and data are the core drivers of success at scale. If you're serious about scaling your business with precision and purpose, it's time to talk to MoBurst. Visit moburst.com and let's build something category-defining together.
Yeah, if you're talking about books, Rookie Smarts is the one that I kind of crystallize this idea. And it's a really good book. And it talks about rookies, and rookies, again, doesn't mean it's the 22-year-old hockey player that, wins that award, Rookie of the Year. It can be an 80-year-old. And it really talks about how you pair rookies with senior mentors. And the combination is powerful. And the story that I like the most is actually they talk about that movie that Tom Hanks is in, where he's the captain of the ship. And the Somali, hijack his ship and hold him hostage and hold the crew hostage. And it's interesting because Tom Hanks is probably the most venerable, actor on, and he's not the rookie. He's the experienced guy. And what the director does for the effect of when they first meet is he takes an actor that had never acted before, who acts as the new captain, and they're shouting at each other, "I'm the captain." No, I'm the captain now. I've got the gun. And you've got the perfect pairing between the rookie and the experienced guy, no acting experience, decades of acting experience. It's a really good book, teaching you how to be a rookie your whole life. And then to talk a little bit about the comment about development, I just met somebody. I'm exploring the front end of our platform of how to get information, of how to build somebody's personal story. And so one of the things that he can do is build a digital twin of doctors or any profession. So you can scale. Right now, he's working more on university professors. And his whole experience has been the same thing, which is, gosh, I hired team A, that didn't work, very experienced. I hired team B, and finally I hired team C, which is me. And he was able to build a product himself, or at least get the idea. There's an issue is sometimes not the developer, it's what's in our head and getting it in a way that the other person can understand it. So now you combine the two, and that's what the power of AI is, at least to get that first MVP out.
Of it. And it's really important to have doctors on board and co-signing. And, I've been critical of the medical industry, not that it's difficult, but I also want I've got a lot of friends somehow. I got 3 or 4 friends that are doctors and surgeons, and they subscribe to the podcast, shout out, and they're like, dude, why are you always smashing doctors so much? So I want to be sympathetic. Because there's some kind of stereotypical personality traits of doctors that we all kind of understand, but you have to worry about, or you have to be considerate of what they've gone through to do it. The rigor of getting your MD is unbelievable. The internships that you have to endure after that are incredible. The working hours that they do in the field is unbelievable. Plus, everybody's got their own Google MD. So as you're kind of going into diagnostics and working with patients as a clinician, you're getting people that are cross-checking you with Google, and they have all the information and they read a blog post and this and that. So if doctors are a little bit chippy, there's probably good reason for it, but also because of that, like if you're starting to introduce diagnostic tools to kind of like help doctors, they might feel threatened by that. So how do you kind of approach kind of the clinicians as to say like, hey, I am friend, I come in
Well, it's
peace?
kind of what I said, right? Is that the victims here is the doctor, the nurse, and the patient. The system that is built to serve us has created that time pressure, right? And so what AI can do, so some of it, I think you just have to be empathetic like everybody else. You can't just say, hey, listen, get your head out of the sand, right? Stop fighting. Is this going to replace your job? Well, first of all, doctors are never going to get replaced, period. But you look at their workload, right? And the amount of time actually what they decided to get into medicine for, that's like less than 10% of their job now. So how can we help them do more of that and less of everything else? And diagnosis takes time. Research takes time, right? Once I know you've got symptom A, B, and C, I may not have an immediate answer, but I got to go back to my journal. I got to go back and talk to other doctors. I've got to go back and do some research and find out, wow, at 4 a.m. in the morning, those doctors probably have those 4 a.m.s that caught. I met Haresh or I met Ryan, and gosh, what's the answer? I don't have one. I got to go find out. Well, that's something that they can offload, right? AI can help. The good news is that like you and I can weed out some hallucination. They can weed out hallucination. Boy, they can learn a lot quicker because AI will synthesize information. So if they view it as a productivity tool, as position, this will make you more productive. Or, oh, by the way, the 2 hours that you really need with this patient to really understand them is already been built out because the patient had software from Diagnostic MD, right? The story's entirely built out in 3 pages that can give you a full, medical, A to Z chronologically built out in terms of how your blood is behaving over time. You have your wearable data, which is longitudinal, and now also you overlay that with the life story data, which is what trauma did they have, what good news did they have, what injuries did they have. All of a sudden, they've got a more complete picture. So we've just taken those 13 minutes you get with the doctor and made 5 minutes of that really productive because he's actually achieving what he needs another hour and 45 minutes to get to understand the whole patient. So it's productivity gains, and it's also how to get knowledge quicker, faster for something that you've seen for the first time as a new symptom.
Yeah, 100%. And to your point, yeah, the more time you can get, the more productive time you can get with your doctor, the better, and also the more productive that they are in their position. Because again, like a lot of the kind of research takes kind of bandwidth and it takes willpower. And what we know is like our attention is a finite resource, which if you're lucky, it resets every night after you go to sleep. But if you don't sleep well for that night, for whatever reason, you're at a deficit. I mean, for example, yesterday I was at an insane attention deficit. Those days where you just like toggling through tabs and you're like, you can't figure out like, did I finish that or did I not? We all have that. Doctors experience that. If they're up against something maybe that their expertise and experience doesn't readily prepare them for, they've got to go do that research component. And if you can take 4 hours off that time and make it into 4 minutes, then they're reserving all of that willpower and basically decision-making capability for what they can do on the bedside, where I think, for most doctors, that's what they got into it for. So there's this great opportunity. And I love your pearl analogy is like, if the AI tools can even peel back one layer of a blanket, one layer of a mattress, like that's the time and energy that they could have spent on something that they're more attracted to.
I'll give you something I just recently experienced firsthand. And so I developed tinnitus, right? Tinnitus is ringing in the ear, and it's really bothersome. Now, is it life-threatening? No. I don't need to go to the emergency room, but if you start searching online, there is no cure for tinnitus. Sorry. That's generally the answer if you spend about an hour doing research. If you continue to dig, you'll find podcasts. There's a doctor in Germany, right, who said, no, there actually is a cure. Now, it's a thesis, but first of all, he does a great job educating. Tinnitus is not, don't see your ENT specialist, which is your first thing you want to go do. because the problem is in the brain. And he describes 3 areas. He goes, the problem is doctors, nothing against the doctor, but doctors are not trained to ask these questions because he specialized in it. He did a lot of research on our behalf. And he said, if you had hearing loss, well, what happens is the part of the brain that uses to process the noise is confused. Like, wait, there's not enough noise coming in, so I got to produce noise. That's the tinnitus, right? So first thing you want to do is take 2 hearing tests over time. If you did one a few years ago, great. Take it again, because you'll see if there's major degradation, that'll be your cause of tinnitus, which means you're ready for hearing aids for 2 reasons. Is once the brain starts getting noise, it stops producing that ringing, right? He said there are 3 things that can happen, and you have to trace 12 months before your tinnitus happened. A serious fall or injury that could have displaced your jaw or your neck. Trauma, something shocking, right? Or stress. Stress is a major factor. Again, this is the mind-body connection that's missing. And it goes, if you've had in the last 12 months, your likelihood of getting tinnitus is really high. And so for me, it's like, wow, the bingo like went off. Last December in this room, the ceiling water was pouring through. We had a bad roofing job and the entire house got destroyed. And in the middle of the night, I'm trying to turn the lights on, see where else the house is leaking, and the entire house is leaking. It felt like the Titanic. And so on the way down, I slipped and fell, and I was lucky that I missed my spine by 1/4 inch. And I didn't fall forward and hit the stainless steel railing, but it was enough to displace. I said, well, bingo 1, maybe there's a misalignment somewhere that's causing this. Obviously, it's traumatic to see your house of 25 years disappear overnight. We were displaced for a whole year. And then obviously there was the stress of, insurance wasn't going to pay for it for now until I sued them. So I had actually all 3 events.
Wow.
And so I was seeing a chiropractor for my back, and I just mentioned this to him, and he said, oh, we've been trained on tinnitus. And he started working 9 different muscles here, readjusting the neck, readjusting the jaw. He put his fingers in exactly where inside the mouth, where the dentist give you the Novocaine shot.
Sure.
And man, it was painful. But I'm telling you, my tinnitus on the right ear is almost gone. And so this is something, first level, there is no cure. It just requires research. It requires training. And so this is available now to doctors to be able to spend that time to find out if you can curate it for them to say, which one of these 3 happened to you? You should ask me that question, right? So I thought that was a telling story around not lack of compassion, but it's a vast world out there. There's 5,000 white papers a year just on breast cancer. There's no humanly possible way to be able to be on top of all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really lends itself to greater specialization, which ultimately is how you find greater excellence. So in this case, your doctor, if is using your tool, he could say like, you know what, I actually don't have experience with this. And historically, we've thought that there was no known cure or treatments for that. However, I can use Diagnostic MD, and they're going to say like, there may be some chiropractic option. There may be some other things. There's other research that's being done from other fields. Maybe you can go pursue that, which is huge. Man, that's a tough year.
It was a tough year. Hey, I always look at that was a lot tougher year for 99.9% of the world wants my problems. So that's kind of how I look at
it. I know a portion of the platform also is kind of leaning towards a kind of a decentralized service model. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I'm trying to understand what you mean by decentralized, meaning if you could expound on that would help me.
Yeah, you bet. And I'm not sure if maybe I read it wrong, but basically if the hospital isn't the center of care and the administration, a lot of times, obviously like HIPAA compliance and the ability to share information has been locked up. So you kind of really are very kind of subject to your primary care physician and their recommendation that perhaps this is an opportunity that the patient actually retains their information, is able to like share outside of that.
Good, really good question. So I think the core of the problem has been owning your own records. You should be the CEO of your own health. Yeah. We shouldn't farm it out, right? And you should be responsible for giving the doctor as much information about you as a person. The problem is that up to now it's been really challenging to get your own data. Now, recent changes by the current administration is making it a lot easier, and the mandates that are required. So I can now grab a lot quicker than even 2 years ago, drag and drop and get everything in one place. That's really, really good. Almost all the AI platforms that are out there around diagnostics and something similar to what we're doing, that's become table stakes very quickly. The problem is it's unstructured because it's like, okay, I've organized everything, all the clutter, and put it in my garage. It still means I'm having a hard time finding what I want in the garage and it's not painting a picture. So structuring it and creating a longitudinal vision of what is a trend so that's the information is gold, right? Data is garbage.
Yeah.
So translating from data to information is an opportunity, right? But the challenge you have is that HIPAA is designed to protect you, but it's also protecting you from your own information. So the problem is and I'll pick on just one company, and it's not because they're good or bad, it's just everybody knows who they are. Epic is like the 800-pound gorilla in electronic health records. But the problem is they serve different clinics and hospitals. So if I go to Stanford, which is close to my house, right, the Stanford Health Clinic, they're an Epic customer. I can drag and drop that data down. But if I happen to go to Palo Alto Medical Foundation or Sutter Health, or I went to UCSF, University of California, San Francisco, all of a sudden they have 3 different instances of Haresh. I can't ask Epic, can I have Haresh, all the records? I have to go individually each one. And then again, you've got this problem with 3 different data rooms. So while it's gotten easier, it's just put all the data in one big corner. It still has to get organized and put into one place. The second issue is wearables has also become a lot easier to be able to put into that, but correlating the two is an opportunity. And I would say that 800,000-pound gorilla is nobody examines the mind. Nobody examines and does a connection between mind and body. And that's where we specialize, and plan to specialize in terms of there's a huge correlation around why doctors even ask you, are you stressed now? Anything going on in your life that we should be worried about? But stress is a pearl. It's a big pearl that hides us.
Well, not only that, but they test efficacy against placebo, which placebo, even when people know they're consuming placebo, it still works 51% of the time.
It has incredible potential to lock things up and unlock things. Just don't know a lot about it. Look at how much is covered in insurance in terms of get sick, you get covered. Get a heart attack, heart transplant, get covered. Ask for a little bit of mental therapy. Good luck, right? It's outside the insurance network.
For people that love solving problems, that's why I think that the medical industry it's so tantalizing, just because it's so fraught with issues. You know, the data one really is just like central and foremost. You know, every time I go see a new specialist, they want to ask you all the same questions, but you're also like writing it on a clipboard. I'm like, dude, what? This is just going to be hanging around the office? You know, you want to know how many alcoholic drinks I have in a week? It's going to be 0 because I don't know. I don't want people judging me in the office. What are we talking about here? So yeah, and this idea of diagnosis as well, and like being able to like democratize the results is super powerful. Let's talk a little bit about the team and kind of where you're at right now. You mentioned you're building team with some folks at Notre Dame. How were you introduced and kind of like begin work with these folks?
Well, I'm an alumni from Notre Dame, so I usually speak to groups that come out here to visit Silicon Valley. One of the breaks, they've been MBA students or this program called Esteem. This year, I happened to get invited by a professor from the Mendoza School of Business, which is the MBA school, and as a guest speaker. And so I was a guest speaker. I was a instructor for his class, which is like a 2-hour class in the afternoon. And so the word got out through him and through others, that I'm there. So my whole calendar got filled up with speaking to different groups, either one-on-one, lunch and learn, dinner group, and then the class. And so I was talking about the platform, how I got the aha moment to the platform, the journey, and my hidden agenda was, can I attract some really, really good talent through this process? And I was fortunate enough to have 3 or 4 people that were really excited about what I was doing. And so they're working hard, finishing their MBA program in May, and fingers crossed that, we raise some money so I can actually hire them by the time they graduate. So it's been a good symbiotic relationship. I said, keep your options open. You never know. The world of investing can be funny. But they're working really hard. They're One student is from, and when I say student, these folks, when you go to MBA school, you have years of experience in between. So they're not just fresh undergrads. They have industry experience. One student's from Ghana. And I asked him, I always ask the same question. Why do you want to buy my product? Why do you want to spend time with me? Right. And I said, well, what intrigued you about wanting to have breakfast with me? He said, well, you know what? He goes, I'm from Ghana. We don't even have doctors in large parts of the country. You'll save millions of lives by just having access to, something is better than nothing. Right. And that was his passion. Another student is from Colombia and I think Bogota, main city. And he had personal, experience with mind-body connection and was passionate around making sure other people that he knew that suffered didn't have the same issue. Third actually wants to start an engineering company. He's a little passionate about product management, and he actually has his own small development company. So they kind of fit the various pieces of the puzzle. And we've got 3 or 4 doctors now that I think are fantastic in terms of a business model where they have the time to perform deep diagnosis. So we're trying to make digital twins of them so we can scale their diagnostic methodology into the platform, because this is all about get the whole person built out. Medical records structured over time with patterns, wearable data, and life story. You put those 3 prisms together, and all of a sudden, a doctor on a 3-page PDF and say, wow, I know you way better than I could have with just that form that you filled out in the lobby. And that's 80% of the game, at least the discovery of who that person is. Then it's a lot easier to say, well, that's where the pearl is. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's certainly not going to take the 10 years it took me to find out what my root cause was. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when the idea of like capturing that data over time, a digital twin is amazing because, the impossible like every time like a doctor retires, it's almost like, oh my gosh, it's like losing a library, because with all of that experience and talent, you pull that away. But let's say if a doctor has had 40 years in a career and he's been wearing a wearable or, an Apple Watch or some kind of like Meta Ray-Ban's been documenting all of his conversations, all of his procedures, all of that, then you're starting to get at least like a piece of all the expertise, that was obtained over his entire career. And like right now, we're basically at day 0 for that starting to happen. Incredible. It sounds like also with, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was saying that the other challenge is the way medicine is done today, like you said, it's specialists, and we're victims of it too, right? As soon as you have an ear problem, I want to go see an ENT person, right? If I have a knee pain, I want to go see somebody that's specialized in that, right? So we also contribute to it as we jump to conclusion, but the connection is probably somewhere else. So getting people that understand how to step back. The doctor that kind of finally gave me the aha that, wow, I can solve this in AI. I met with him, filled out the forms in the lobby. His nurse came in, took all the vitals, took the notes as to why I was there, created a beautiful manila folder with all of that ready for the doctor to take a look at. He comes in, it's on his desk, and he sits down and he goes, I don't want to open that. It was like very unconventional. I don't even want to know what symptoms you have right now. I want to know you. Start from the beginning. Born C-section or natural? I didn't know. I mean, I did, but most people don't. One of the patients we put through the platform had to say, let me put you on hold. I really don't know. I'll have to ask mom. So he wanted to start from the beginning. Tell me from the beginning. Tell me everything. And then he peppered questions in. And then it was only after 2 hours, which you don't get with the doctor, that he went on the whiteboard and drew 8 quadrants. He goes, listen, I've been trying to fill in all of these quadrants. And the problem you had is you've seen 12 specialists. Each one was right, but they were wrong because they each were reaching behind the curtain piece and feeling one part of the elephant. I'm going to play Sherlock Holmes. I'm going to take that curtain off, and we're going to see the whole elephant. They're all interconnected. And bingo, I forgot about my reason I was there, and all I could think about is, oh my God, this is just systematic data collection. Yes, it's a machine like we were doing assets in real estate and energy and renewable energy, but obviously the body's more complex and it's got a mind component to it. But the methodology of scanning data and organizing it so you can see it, the light bulb went off. It's the bedside manners and the systematic way of collecting information about the whole person. And when you can feed that, even if today I challenge anybody, go type your symptom into any of the platforms, including Claude Health that's out, ChatGPT Health that's out. It'll give you a quick answer and feel really good, right? But what it should be doing is, let me ask you some more questions. Let me ask you some more questions.
Yeah.
Because the more you can give it, the better all this, you're actually going to get the right. You're going to find that flow sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think that that's ultimately the promise is you get more of that kind of attention from your physician, because I personally really like kind of the more shaman modality, which is kind of leaning towards that, and shamanism is usually rooted in some kind of like metaphysical kind of belief structure, which is also great. And I'm open to that. But really being from the West, it's like I'm more scientific rigor is kind of the language I speak. So doctors are the same way. Scientific rigor is kind of the language that they speak to reach the outcomes they have. But then also the shamanistic kind of tactic of like getting to know your psychology and who you are as a person works just as well in kind of a scientific modality. There might not be any like papers being able to validate some of it, but I think anecdotally they all know the difference. When they're having a good day, they have better outcomes. I mean, there's just a certain amount of like truth to that. One thing that might be kind of concern for additional data points was another guest on the show kind of brought this up, that as AI is creating more opportunities, more data, more diagnostic opportunities, that it does increase liability. That if the doctor are using the tools and somehow miss it, then they could be held liable, malpractice and things like that. Have you heard anything about potential liability hangups when you're talking to doctors and things like that?
Yes. I mean, I think doctors in general are very risk averse. They already have huge liability. That's why I prefer their revenue goes towards malpractice insurance, right? So it's already there. And I think anything that's new creates more fear. But I look at it and saying, listen, if I can help somebody find a cure, not a treatment, big difference in those two words, faster. And we're going to say each one is a hypothesis, which we're going to try. But now they have more knowledge out there and they're smart enough to weed out the stuff that's what I call as hallucination, that AI doesn't produce the right results. I think they're actually going to reduce their liability. But like anything new, people have to get past this initial fear. And unfortunately, our media loves to play on with fear as opposed to all the successes. You get the one example of, one Tesla that, happened to crash and burn. I mean, it's like, did we forget about the other 50,000 casualties that happen every year based on human mistakes driving the car?
Yeah, well, and the myth that AI is taking everyone's jobs, really was debunked, because that was just because the big players, whether it's Anthropic or OpenAI or Google, they just didn't want their subscriptions to show up in like a marketing expense. Rather, they can put it over into HR. So they're like, hey, it's not that you're spending $100,000, you're saving $1 million because you didn't have to hire somebody. Right. So it's, well, it's the sales tactic
run a little faster. And I would say that every invention we've had, if somebody's told you in 1900 that 98% of the farmers would be displaced, you'd be pretty freaked out. But it exactly played out that way. There's only 2% of our population that does all the farming that we need for our food because of automation. It just happened over 100 years. This is happening faster. So jobs will get displaced, but it'll create new jobs. I remember listening to a podcast with Jensen Huang of NVIDIA, and he said, well, just think of all the robots that are out there. Well, there's going to be an industry you're making clothes because you want your robot to look prettier than the other one. So there'll be a whole industry around garments. And so it'll create new jobs. It's just constructive destruction, on warp speed.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It's funny to think about, like, our great grandkids will probably be romantic about our era and be like, wow, you had to change the channel with like a remote control, not with your brain. Must have been awesome. In the same way that
what's the steering wheel of the car? Why are you having to have the steering wheel?
Yeah. You drove? Wow, that seems cool. You're like, no, it was terrible.
Yeah.
Like, we were stuck in traffic all the time. In the same way that I think about farming, if I could go back and see great-great-grandpappy Estes and be like, hey, I want to be a farmer. He's like, describe to me your life. I tell him, he'd be like, dude, what are you, insane? Like, no, you like a hot shower? That sounds amazing. Tell me about that.
They're changing fast, but no, there will be definitely job displacement. That doesn't mean that. But if you kind of sit there with your head stuck in the sand, you will not have a job. You're going to have to reinvent yourself. Go back to that rookie smart. You have to always be learning, right? Something new.
100%. Love to hear your opinion on kind of the ground floor of fundraising. And right now, fundraising is particularly frothy, which, being a tech guy myself is very exciting because a couple of years ago, man, it was really stalling out. Like everybody, had, iron locks around their wallets and they didn't know what to do. But now, in particular, like people are looking for opportunities and really it's kind of a winner take all market. So things are moving fast. So you're speaking with investors. What are kind of their concerns? What are they looking for right now as far as projects?
I mean, clearly AI is front and center. I have a lot of friends that have done well over time, and they've all seemed to have become VCs or either running their own fund or part of a larger fund is kind of their twilight career. And, you talk to them and it's, all the business plans coming across are very AI-centric. It's hard to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? In terms of what really AI means, right? Or is it just kind of slapped on as a way to get attention? But I think most people are worried about the bubble, right? Is it getting too frothy? Is it going to burst? And it will. I mean, there's nothing new, right? It happened when the auto industry came out, and it happened when the radios came out and televisions, and there are hundreds, if not thousands, of business plans, and most will die. But I still think that most feel very, very bullish, and it's still early innings of AI. And this has bigger and longer legs than .com. So I personally feel that way. And maybe that's what I'm hearing because that's what I want to hear. But I hear both sides of the story. There seems to be more optimism that the application layer. So all the money that's going in today is I would call the infrastructure, right? The NVIDIA, the data, the companies, the LLMs. But what you do with all that layer, like a diagnostic MD, the productivity layer, that race is still wide open, right? And companies are still emerging. Yeah, is there overinvestment? Probably. Overvaluation? Yes. I do think that investors, the whole process is very inefficient. And you've raised money. I'm sure a lot of your guests on the show or listeners on the show have raised money, and it's just inefficient. You just have to kiss too many frogs on both sides to find it. I mean, I remember when TPG invested in us at Nocatus, he saw over 3,000 business plans. He invested in 3 companies that year. And I said, I could have gotten to Stanford a lot easier. Good that you invested in me. But it's because it's inefficient. I get really frustrated when investors just say, they have a blank page and say, just send me your prospectus. I met only one investor so far. It was in Denver. He had 10 questions when he opened his slide and said, it was like the immigration form. If any of these are yes, please come and see me. I mean, if all of them are yes, anyone's no, don't even bother. And he said, you have to be within 60 miles of me because I'm hands-on. And I said, oh my God, if every VC would actually be really clear on what they're looking for.
Yeah, save you a lot of time.
Save a lot of time.
Yeah.
But not to throw rocks at VCs, but that's my one magic wand is that please tell us what you're looking for and what you're not looking for.
Totally. Nice. All right, Haresh, we're about to enter the quantum round. Are you ready?
Okay. Whatever it is, bring it on.
It was the lightning round, but as we got to 2026, I'm like, no, this is the quantum round now. So a couple of questions. You're obviously very bullish for AI and health tech. What's the bear case? Where should AI not be implemented into healthcare?
I don't think at the end of the day, it's the ultimate decision maker, right? It is a facilitator for building good hypotheses. At the end of the day, it should not replace the doctor. It shouldn't replace an expert. It should be a good second opinion or a third opinion. It should be a place to gather more information, but it should not be the final word.
You were entering college today as a freshman. What would you study?
Prompt engineering. There should be a whole degree in prompt engineering, how to use AI. And I think college education needs to be completely revamped. I mean, every engineering course ended up being derivatives and integrations. And it's like, I never used them a single day. It didn't prepare me for day one on the job. So I shouldn't be using calculators. I shouldn't be using slide rules. We shouldn't be using abacus. And similarly, all the stuff that they teach he isn't really preparing students for day one. So, but yeah, I think prompt engineering to me is going to be, I've just seen my son. It's amazing how much more he can get done than I can, because he's reinvented himself to be a prompt engineer. It's how you converse with AI.
Yeah. Nice. And I know you have some charitable organizations that are really near and dear to your heart. And I'd love to give them shout out and just talk about some of the work that you're doing, or they're doing. Let's start with the American Indian Foundation. Why are these folks important to you?
Well, they a good friend of ours. We've known each other since we moved to Silicon Valley in the early 80s. And they had a successful career. And, they started this foundation after they sold their company. And it was really to bring technology and, I would say, hope to the poorest part of India. And Bill Clinton became the chairman of that, honorary chairman of that foundation. He gave a talk. I happened to be there, and he made an interesting comment. He goes, India is one of those countries where the correlation between IQ and income don't correlate. So this particular organization raises $250 million buckets, and for that they can build a small school, a small clinic, and a library. And they educate people, and so they produce some really incredible people out of that. That's what they do. You get medical care, like I said, you can get educated, you can learn about computers, the internet, and I'm sure they'll evolve as technology moves, learn more about AI. And they put it in the deepest, largest slums that they can find, and there are a lot of them still, unfortunately, in India. So that's their mission.
Amazing. Yeah, I've met so many dozens of just dynamic, incredible founders that happen to be Indian. What is the thread about the Indian people that make them such great founders and operators?
I don't know if I have the answer to it. I can only recount a story that somebody wrote. He's a Silicon Valley executive, and he just said that things are so fluid in the business world. You got to figure out how to navigate. And so, if you look at traffic in India. There's a joke that they sent an atheist to India because he obviously didn't believe in God. He goes, well, we want you to believe in God, but all we want you to do is sit in this intersection. And we'll talk to you at the end of the day. And he watched the chaos for the full 12 hours of daylight. And he came back and was, the only way this country functions, there's got to be a God watching the traffic. And so I think tying that back to, if you try to navigate Indian streets and the chaos, that's what software is. Your pricing is wrong the minute you put it down. Your business model is wrong the minute you write it on a PowerPoint. The world is fluid and it's changing. And I just think that we've learned how to navigate, changing. That's not my theory. That's the best I can understand. Trying to say, why are they more successful? That's probably one reason is we grew up in chaos, right? So we know how to deal with chaos because the business world is nothing but chaos.
And gracefully, I think, too, like the Indian people, of course, I'm generalizing and stereotyping here, no disrespect, but like gracious and polite and courteous. And, it's great. In America, I think probably, the president of the United States is a cartoonish example of what they think a businessman is like, but maybe the truth, it couldn't be further than that. How about the Foundation for Excellence?
FFE is also started by a good friend of ours. He'll be our very first client, also Makanas. And he has a similar vision, but very tech focused. And so he likes to give full scholarships to kids in high school and in college, but they have to earn it every year by maintaining a GPA. And you get tied directly. So if I give, let's say, $3,000, it ties me directly with the number of students directly, and they can communicate with me, write to me, so I know my money's being passed through. And so they have to have very high GPA, very high standardized testing scores. But the criteria is always a but in life. And but is you have to have no money, meaning you are the poorest of the poor. But they give direct scholarships, and every year they bring a dozen of them that have actually immigrated here and doing really well and now actually become donors. So it's really gratifying as you get a firsthand touch to who you've given money to. And the foundation itself runs on no money, so it's 100% pass through, which is kind of cool.
Wonderful. And folks can check them out. They're ffe.org, and the other was aif.org. We'll put links to that in the show notes. And we're running out of time, but we didn't even have a chance to talk about your new book, so people can go learn more about Haresh. Now, I know Haresh a little bit. We've been talking the last couple of weeks, and he has an incredible story of how he solved his own 55-year medical mystery. The book is called The Ghost in My Body, and from his website, you can sign up to get alerts when that gets published. So that's hareshpatel.ai to learn a little bit more about Haresh. But this has been awesome. I love what you're working on. I'm a fan. Where can people connect with you online
Well,
personally?
LinkedIn is obviously a good place. Looking me up as Haresh Patel. My website, as you mentioned, hareshpatel.ai. Those are probably the two best ways to reach me. And Haresh at mydiagnosticmd.com for my email. So any one of those reach me, and I will definitely reply back. But I appreciate you bringing me on as a guest, and excited to stay in touch.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And how can I confirm that you're not actually the digital twin of Haresh?
I don't know. You'll have to. Nowadays, you have to look at videos over and over and over again. So I think you'll have to re-listen to this podcast.
That's right. That's right. If when you were talking about the leak in your roof, if I would have seen drops starting to come down in the screen, I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know what's real anymore. But I really appreciate it. Great to talk to you again, Haresh. Appreciate you. Hey, founders, let me ask you this. Are you building with AI or getting left behind by it? If you're serious about scaling smarter, faster, and bolder, you need to check out aiforfounders.co. It's your go-to resource for cutting through the noise and actually using AI to grow your startup. Each week, AI for Founders drops a sharp, no-fluff newsletter, dives deep with expert guests on the podcast, and hosts monthly workshops where you can get your hands dirty with the real tools and strategies. Whether you're pre-seed or Series B and beyond, launching something new, or just staying sharp, AI for Founders gives you the edge you need to win in 2025 and beyond. Hit aiforfounders.co to subscribe to the newsletter, tune into the podcast, and grab your spot in the next workshop. And it's all free. Build smarter, move faster, think bolder with AI for Founders. Now back to the show.